Dejection is one of the ways in which you enter the process of yoga. It's an experience that the human goes through. Dejection is an abrupt or sudden awakening brought on by external forces or circumstances that sort of thrusts the human into this experience of a sudden awakening. That is dejection. If you are familiar with the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna experiences dejection in chapter 1 when he's poised on the battlefield, looking over all the relatives that he has to wage war against. So this external circumstance or force, it depends on each person. And the awakening causes a loss of equilibrium in one or more components of the human system, mental, vital, physical, or all of them. Total dejection is when all the components lose their equilibrium. And the root cause is that if it is an external force, typically a large influx of sattva is received by the psychic and it steps forward, pushing through the normal structures of human nature that you are all used to. And this sudden shift causes these other normal components to lose their equilibrium. In the mind, you get confused. In the vital, you get frustrated. In the physical, you feel weak. You can feel it as depression, weakness in the body, complete loss of drive. These are all various symptoms that you are in dejection. It could also be due to external circumstance. The human is going on living its life. It has a strategy for living in life, and suddenly an event or a confluence of events puts the human in a situation where their normal way of interacting with life completely fails. Health emergency, relationship breakdown in your material circumstances, trauma caused by natural events or man-made events, causes the human to be unable to function in the way they are accustomed to. And it just breaks. The mind and the intellect and the ego don't know. They've lost their equilibrium. That allows the psychic, which was in the background, to step forward. And because the psychic stepping forward forcefully, or because these human components have broken down or lost their equilibrium, results in you having an experience which is completely new to you. You have no idea because you have never experienced it. There is nothing in your knowledge base or your experience that has equipped you to deal with it. That is dejection. It's not the same as a gradual awakening which you come to in the course of the evolution of your consciousness. And the awakening is necessary, whether it comes suddenly or gradually, because only when you awaken, you become aware of this inner dimension of life. And without that, this process of yoga cannot begin. In Gita Yoga, dejection is a necessary condition for you to enter into the process of Gita Yoga. Total dejection is necessary in Gita Yoga for the completion of the process, meaning the human has to let go of all their components for divine to step forward and manifest completely. It's the nature of a human being. The mind is constantly calculating profit and loss, how to keep you safe. The intellect is constantly making choices in support of the mind and the ego is constantly trying to protect its value, your value. It's constantly trying to increase your value or decrease someone else's value so that your relative value is always higher. That's just the ego trying to do its thing. So each of these components are just following their natural dharma, their functioning. And the divine component, your psychic inside, is just a silent witness, allowing these human components to function, experiencing life, but under the control of these human components. When you experience dejection, all these components are broken. The psychic is forward, but now how do you live life? You have to go through a process of getting the mind, the intellect, and the ego to operate in these new conditions. For many people, what happens is this kind of dejection without proper support or knowledge. Sometimes all that someone needs to know is this is part of the spiritual process. This is a known experience. You are not going crazy, and people have gone through this, and you can come out of it. Otherwise, people think they're going crazy because the experience is so alien to them. And then you go and you see the medical establishment, and you know what road that leads you down. If you have dejection or loss of equilibrium only in one component or two, it is less total, it is easier to handle. And depending on the component, you can start taking steps. The type of yoga you will follow and the process you will take, you will naturally be attracted to based on the nature of your dejection. It doesn't mean that everyone's dejection has to be a quote-unquote horrible experience. With the right support, and if you had already educated yourself on the spiritual process, when that abrupt awakening does come, the mind and the intellect already have information. You can make the choices that are most supportive. It's the ignorance that leads to the fear, because it's fear of this unknown state, this unknown experience. The other thing that happens is when you do awaken like this, you still have the momentum of your old human life. You are embedded in a condition of life. You have a family, you have a job, you have bills to pay. All these things, they continue. So this newly exposed consciousness, after a while, is just drawn back in. These components recover their equilibrium because all the surrounding structures sort of reimpose themselves. And a lot of people are glad because now it feels familiar again. And that opportunity to enter the process of yoga goes away. Until it happens again years down the road. Or if your soul is in a hurry and its time has come, it will recur. So the key is correct knowledge and aligning to whatever extent you can your external life circumstance to properly support the newly emerged consciousness. When you go through dejection and you awaken, your consciousness is as though it is reborn, new, because the old paradigm doesn't work. That's what causes the loss of equilibrium. A lot of us have gone through awakening, but we may not recognize it. And there is always the confusion between just depression, which is just a mental experience, where the mental component loses its normal functioning state, or the ego loses its normal functioning state, resulting in frustration, or the intellect gets confused. Dejection is described by some as a total system failure. All the operating paradigm that you're used to as a human seems to break down. But in that condition, you are now open. Your consciousness is open under the right guidance, and you aligning your choices and action with that guidance and the new correct information, you can enter and make quick progress on the path of yoga. Because that is basically for a normal condition without dejection or this abrupt awakening. We tend to do things in these micro increments. We can only make as much progress as your mind, your intellect, your ego, and your physical will allow and tolerate. But where the psychic wants to go, where your soul wants to go, is much further. So when you only allow that much, when the lower human nature only allows that much, then that is the natural path of evolution. You are making progress subject to the control of your lower nature. Whereas in dejection, the lower nature is completely disrupted and the psychic steps forward. You have an opportunity at that point to really step into the yoga. Once you enter the process of yoga, dejection reoccurs. It's a constant companion as long as you're on the path of yoga. But it's not as dramatic. Every time a new samskara or a new cluster opens up and veils you, at that point where they overwhelm you, you are just like you were before. You are veiled. You are completely overcome by the experience of this samskara. At that point, you will experience something similar, but it will be a lower grade or a weaker dejection, if you will. When that samskara burns off, your clarity returns and the dejection appears to recede. So it's a constant companion until the great majority of samskaras have been burnt or transformed. If you experience dejection, know that there is still further to go and celebrate it. You're making progress.